Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to take a look at two new Mattel figures. These are, as you can see, the 5 or 6 or whatever inch basic figures. They're basically the smaller basic figures from Mattel, and we have the brand new bluish Stygimoloch as well as the new paint variant of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and then it kind of has like the bite and fight sort of color scheme on the Rex. But you can see here on the back, the only other figure that is included in this wave would be the green Velociraptor, which I actually do have, but I don't think I've reviewed here on the channel. But maybe we'll get to that one at some point. But super happy to have these now in my collection, and I'm really excited to get them out of the packaging and take a look at them with you guys. So let's do that right now. So here is our Stygimoloch, and here is our Tyrannosaurus Rex, and both figures look super cool. This is actually the first time I've had one of these kind of 5-inch basic Stygimoloch figures, because the original one that came out, which had kind of a more realistic color scheme than this blue, I was unable to get a hold of, and the Indoraptor as well I was never able to find. So if you guys out there happen to have those and you are interested in kind of ditching them, let me know, as I may be interested in picking them up from you. But again, these two both look super cool, and I actually really quite like the paint scheme of the Rex on this one a lot more than the older version. But again, super cool looking here at first glance, but the only way to truly tell how cool is with a closer look, so let's do that right now. So the Stygimoloch does sport some pretty darn nice detailing up here on the head sculpt, which is no surprise when it comes to a Mattel sculpt. You pretty much always get a very highly detailed sculpt, and that is exactly what you see here on the head sculpt of the Stygimoloch. Not much going on as far as paint application, of course, as you only have a nice black painted eye, but that eye is actually picture perfect as far as the positioning of that paint. That looks really good. You can see on this eye as well is really nicely done. You can see once we come up to the dome of the head here on the Stygimoloch, you do have a nice whitish coloration up there, but the actual horns and everything that kind of surround and engulf the head do not have any paint on them at all. As we start to move down into the neck, you can continue to see how nicely done the detailing is. Really nice skin texture, I will say. You can see almost like little tiny bumps and stuff, real little osteoderms on the sculpt of this Stygimoloch. You have some very nicely sculpted hands as well as the arms as well, sporting some somewhat decent musculature, but not too much there in the arms. You can see that the stomach looks pretty nice. It actually looks really thin from up above, but when you look at it down here, he looks kind of well fed, so that's actually kind of like a very weird aspect of the figure, almost like a trick this Stygimoloch is playing on me right there. You can see some ridges that run along the spinal column of the dinosaur. Some more really nice detailing here in the leg sculpt and the thigh coming down into the calf. The feet are super big, really oversized pretty much all the time as far as the Mattel figures go, but that foot sculpt is just ridiculous. It almost looks like a car ran his foot over and squished it a bit there, but not too much as far as actual detailing going on in the foot. The foot actually isn't really all that nice looking, which is shocking. Like these first two toes look pretty nice, but this one just looks a little ugly, I think. Not too sure why, but very strange on the part of Mattel to have actually somewhat of an ugly appearance to one of their figures, as they normally do an incredible job in all of them. And that's not to say that the figure is bad, but just that foot sculpt is a little iffy, if you ask me. And then we continue to move out the length of the tail. You can see some more really nice skin texture, some more of those kind of osteoderms that run along the body, and then some more of those ridges up here on the top of the tail. As far as the coloration goes, we pretty much only have the blue, and then we have this kind of a yellowish coloration that leaks down around onto the body, which looks pretty cool. It's a nice flashy looking paint scheme. Looking at this side of the dinosaur, it's pretty much the same as what we had just seen on the previous side, except you could see almost like a sort of a snake-like appearance to the turn of the dinosaur from up here, but there's not really too much difference when you look at it from the side. I will say the foot sculpt over here looks a little better, kind of, than what we had seen over there. It doesn't look quite as large, but still not really all that great. But regardless, the actual detailing of the Stygimoloch skin texture and all that fun stuff does look really quite nice over here, and it has some nice detailing on the underside, it seems, as well. But pretty decent looking Stygimoloch, and I'm really psyched to have one of these figures now in my collection. And the Rex, we have actually reviewed the sculpt before, so as far as this one goes, we only really need to see what's new, and that would just be the paint. You can see a nice grayish coloration for the primary body. As far as like all up here, it's a really nice gray coloration that I definitely think looks very good on the figure. You can see a nicely painted eye with a yellow and then kind of a brown pupil. I think the pupil is that same color as that brown coloration that kind of borders around the eye, which I love that they've highlighted that area with that darker brown there on the eye. No paint there on the teeth, which is definitely unfortunate, definitely a little bit of a downside. And you can see this light coloration here for the lower jaw. And then up here we have like this very dark brown coloration, almost like a burnt umber brown, that comes down in stripes along the side of the dinosaur, but then stops pretty abruptly right there before the tail. You do have kind of like that speckling throughout the figure, as far as like that dark brown speckling here and there. But other than that, there's not really too much else to the figure as far as the paint scheme goes. It seems like that's all that we really have going on. Very nice looking, kind of a smaller Rex figure as far as this Mattel line goes, and a beautiful new paint scheme for the figure. For length in the Stygimoloch, about 5 3/4 inches, or around the 14.5, maybe a little over in the centimeter range for a height. The highest point's probably the head, and that's about 2.5 inches, or around 6.5 centimeters. For the Rex, you're going to see it at about a little under 6 inches, or about 15 centimeters, and then a height is about 2.25 inches, actually in between 2.25 and 2.5 inches, or around 6 centimeters, somewhere in that range. As far as articulation goes, we have no articulation in the head of the Rex at all. We have articulation in the arms, and then the legs, and then a swivel tail. And that's all we've got for the Rex. As far as the Stygimoloch, we do have articulation in the head, which I can see right there. So that's a plus over the Rex for that one. We have articulation in the arms, and then the legs, and the tail on a swivel as well. So the Stygi does have a little extra articulation over the Rex. As far as the size comparison goes, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Dilophosaurus, and Robert Muldoon next to these 5-inch basic figures, and you can definitely see next to these figures here, if you happen to not own any of the other basic kind of smaller figures, that they are quite small, but definitely a little bigger than the mini size range. So they are really nicely detailed for their very small size, but do, again, still sport a fairly small size overall. So these Mattel 5-inch basic figures, the Tyrannosaurus repaint and the Stygimoloch repaint, are both really cool looking figures. The Stygimoloch is not the most realistic paint scheme, I can definitely say that, with that kind of bluish coloration, but who knows, I mean, potentially Stygimoloch could have been blue. It just probably wouldn't have looked quite as like bright and odd as we see here with this one, but I could definitely see blue being a realistic coloration on a Stygimoloch, so that's not to say that this isn't really a realistic color scheme. It's just, I think the overall appearance isn't the most appealing as far as realism goes when it comes to the Stygimolochs that we've had from Mattel in the past. But the sculpt is really beautiful, I will say that. Definitely one of my favorites, I think, as far as these 5-inch basic figures go, except for the feet. The feet of the Stygimoloch are kind of exceptionally ugly, if you ask me, but everywhere else, as far as the sculpt goes, I feel like it is really quite nicely done, and the tail doesn't look obscenely short on the figure in comparison to some of the others. Like if you look at it next to the Rex tail looks ridiculously short. Stygimoloch's tail doesn't look all that bad, but still a little bit too short. The Rex, definitely a really nice sculpt, very faithful with that really nice JP style head sculpt. But again, the proportions on both of these actually for the most part are really quite off, as the Stygimoloch and Rex both have kind of gigantic feet. And the Rex again has that much shorter tail, which does have a tendency to make him look quite ridiculous overall. But the paint scheme that they've given it is definitely better than the original version, if you ask me. I definitely like the Bite and Fight colors better than that kind of older Mattel Rex color scheme. So it was a good choice on the part of Mattel to re-release this with that darker color scheme that we see here. So two really, really cool Mattel figures, two really, really cool basic 5-inch figures. I am a huge fan of the larger basic line, and I'm not a huge fan of these smaller ones, but I definitely do enjoy them quite a bit. So if you would like to pick these up, I do know they've been showing up in Walgreens, which I feel like the price for these is just outlandish at about $7 a piece. Definitely too expensive if you ask me for what the size and everything is for these figures, but still pretty fun if you are interested and you do want to pick them up. They are really, really cool figures overall. So make sure if you are interested, you head to your local Walgreens, pick these up if they are in stock, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.